Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And very happy to welcome Marcus Higgs here. He is a communications coach, and it's for parents and preteens. But as we were talking before the show started, you mostly work with the parents.
Yes, I only work with the parents. I'll say that. I used to be a high school teacher and middle school teacher, but I'm working just with the parents now.
You were an English teacher.
Correct, correct.
I read up
Um,
on you.
that's all right. I remember I came out of the classroom one time and I was speaking to our chairperson, Mr. Scott, and I was just like, man, this class, English class feels like therapy sometimes. And he said, that's why we call it the humanities. We're teaching them to be human. And that's the truth, man. Communication is key. Like the quality of your life is directly related to your ability to communicate with yourself and communicate with others. So yeah.
I definitely could have used that when I was in high school. I went through a lot, man, and attempted to end my own life several times and couldn't really tell anybody my problems. So that I can see where that could be very, very helpful. But before we get into it, man, tell us a little bit more about you.
All right. I whoa, yeah, okay, let's go for it. The origin story. Um, I was born in California. My father's from the Bahamas, my mother's from the Philippines, and I live in the Bahamas right now. That's where I am. And I studied journalism in college at in Alabama at a college called Oakwood University or College when I was there. And then I went straight off to South Korea actually to be a missionary. Um, I was always sincere with the faith. As I grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist. Um, while there, my worldviews changed. No animosity towards the church, but I still had a connection with the divine, as I say, it's something bigger, higher forces, greater powers. Loved teaching, continued teaching. Not studied. I taught in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, when it still had it was a different Saudi Arabia then. And then taught in Spain, Thailand, and just gaining this worldview of connecting with people, of gathering their stories. And what I do now is helping parents in that transition phase of from kids into teenage to young adults, um, help that transition go smoother, but even more than that, to bring out their full potential, I say. And we going deeper into that, but passing on your virtues and values without being preachy. Virtues are with everybody, all humanity. We all have our virtues. And again, I can get into the details of that, but then your values are what you find important.
Mhm.
Um, and everybody has different values. And I remember you said their topics we I can hold space for a lot of people. And that's when you understand that a lot of people as characters in books, like they're looking at the world through their own perspective and you meet them with curiosity. And that's what I do in communications. And that's what I'm presently doing. You asked for my origin story. I told you a little bit about me, but that's why I love doing what I do. Like I love connecting with people and gathering stories from around the world and then helping them communicate in their own homes. Yeah.
Well, in this world, we have social media, and I know that's shaped children a lot differently than the way things were when we were in school.
Yeah.
But as far as a child themselves, have they really changed? I mean, as what am I trying to say? Maybe as how they communicate, because you notice mostly kids are on their phone. I'll see them in the same room with someone, but they'll text and not really talk face to face. Is that
Yeah.
major difference, or as kids are always going to be kids?
Well, I'll say like this. Yes, and that and is followed by no. Because um there's no meaning without context. And in this context, you're right. We do have our devices. We do have more screens, more things are filling our mind. Yeah. However, the way human development happens, it's still the same as from back in the ancient days. And let me explain that to you. When we are a kid, we are dependent on our parents. Now hold on, even before I get into this, the word educate and the word parent, at the root of it, the root of the word, the etymology means to bring forth. In all that I do, it's about bringing forth what's already in the person. And I assume that there's goodness in there, there's humanity, and there's beauty that I can bring forth if I create the environment for it to flourish, right? So I'm not trying to push anything in there. But with kids, from 0 to 7, it's black and white. The world is what you tell them. And their understanding is, okay, you're protecting me, you're close to me. I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm just a bobbling ball of flesh or whatnot, right? And then they start to understand as they're interacting with other people in the community, other adults, trustworthy adults, that it's not black and white. Like what you're saying is not necessarily right. This is where they start to get bigger skepticism. And they're just like, well, no, what you're saying is not wrong. And then they don't know who to trust. Now, I call it ICE. When we're coming into adolescence, it's called identity breaking. C is collaborative trust. Who do I trust? And then E is emotional management. Like your emotions actually tell you they're a barometer or a measure of what do I want? Who do I trust? How am I feeling? And then learning how to read this in other people. But this is the first time at the rodeo, so they don't know how to do this. So that's why there's a lot of turmoil at this age, or could be potential for it. There's a high potential for it. Um, it's natural. It's there's supposed to actually be a breaking away at this stage when they come into adolescence. And a lot of parents don't get that. They're supposed to turn away to try to form their own identity. And when there's a breaking, it's either the kid's going to turn away or the parent has to say, hey, it's time for you to forge your own. A better way I could put it is maternal energy says, hey, I love you. You're secure. Come close to me. Paternal energy says, hey, I love you. You're secure. I need you to believe this on your own. And I still love you from afar and I support you, but I need you to be independent. And that's how you create a holistic adult. But that independence actually isn't the final stage. If you can do it, I don't want to say right, because if you do it well, then there's that interdependence on the other end, where you have an adult daughter now. Not to get into your family business or so on, but it's where it's I'm an independent person and I'll take care of me to be in support of you. If you promise to take care of you, to be in support of me. And that's where we're eventually trying to move the family towards, trying to move our neighborhoods towards, our community towards. So all of that is still the same from ancient time. That's what it means to be human. Now, when you have devices, when you have screens, and you have more stories being inputted in, consciousness speeds up. And kids are developing faster, or they're starting to know more of the world before they start to learn how to process it. And it can get overwhelming. But if you manage it right, and then actually start having these conversations, you can help them process it here, so they know how to manage it when they start getting into those conversations.
The sad thing is when you see parents use those devices as a babysitter.
Hey, you're right.
I want to spend time with my children, even
Hmm.
as adults. I'm trying to, especially since I've got three, I'm trying to get individual time with them. Let's go do something you enjoy. We can talk, get caught up. Tell me what's going on in your life. When my kids were little, I was fortunate enough that I worked a job where I worked 4 tens, so I was off on Fridays,
Okay.
and
All
so I
right.
might go up to the school and eat lunch with them, or if it was summertime, I'd take them fishing, that kind of thing. And, I mean, all the social media and all that stuff hadn't quite got built up yet,
Yeah.
and I see some of the parents just kind of, oh, I don't want to mess with you right now. Here's the iPad, here's a cell phone, and they're not spending that quality time. They're not pushing, what should I say, teaching value like they should. And then when it's kind of too late, you notice that it's too late. How do you get that communication back?
Uh, I'll answer your question, but I'll even tee it up a bit for myself to hit it. No, but that's a good question. How do you get it back? Before we get there, I'll say even to build upon it, we are the stories we tell ourselves. And when you give them that iPad uh, to babysit them, think of the stories that are coming in, and they've not learned how to process it, right? And then one more thing is there's no persuasion without identification, meaning I can't shift your thought until you start to see how we're the same. But who's the closest thing that a child can identify with? The parent, as well as, having a kid. Who's the closest thing that you identify with? It's that little one down there. So there's persuasion going both ways. But if we're not intentional with that persuasion, they're literally warehouses of people sitting at computers figuring out how to hijack your child's attention. And they're being paid hundreds and thousands of dollars to do it and do it well. So it's not your fault. However, if you're not proactive about it, it will happen, you know? Now, you asked, how do we get it back? When we say it, how do we, can you help me frame it again? How do we get back there?
How do we get that communication,
Hey, okay.
that uh, that relationship back? It's because you kind of given a relationship to a device and not
Yeah.
to yourself.
Yeah. Um, Hearing you say it like that, first thing that came to my mind is producers or consumers. I believe we're all creatives and we're all acting from a place of what do you want to bring into this world? What is this world you want to see? What do you want to live in? The reason you have your background as beautiful as it is when I came on is because you owned your creative sense and said, this is my domain and this is what I want here. And you learn to collaborate and speak with people. So you put it up there. And my whole point being is we act from a place of identity when you start to see your child, give them the identity of you're a creative. And this is why I say we create from our virtues. And I'll explain what virtues are. Um, but when you start to give them that identity and you start to connect to that place, it's enjoyable to meet people in conversation then. It's enjoyable of, hey, this person sees something greater in me that I didn't see. And then they start to meet that. I only because we had this conversation, but I don't know your grandson, right? But I love his creative effort of what he's doing. You told me he's starting a business, he's making all the jewels and stuff. Um, if I were his teacher, I would speak to that. I say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. Hey, this is where it may get tough. And I know you can keep on going through. And that's where you start to encourage them speaking to their identity. How do you get the communication back? We love to be with people we know, trust, and like. But if a person knows my character strengths and I can trust them, of course I like conversing with them. And then that's how you start to open up that and you start to bring forth that character that's inside them. All right. So did that help answer the
Actually,
question?
it did.
All right.
Now I'm going to use myself as an example. When I
Okay.
was a teenager,
Hmm.
I didn't really spend time with my parents. My dad loved to work, and that was his life, and that's all he wanted to do.
Yeah.
My mother was a little reserved, and I started hanging around the wrong crowd and
Hmm.
got real heavy into alcohol and drugs, and that
Yeah.
was my downfall. My values weren't what I was brought up on. And I will say I got a lot of my values from my grandparents. I spent a lot of
Hmm.
time with them. But
Hmm.
teenager, you don't want to hang out with grandma and grandpa all the time. You want to hang out with your friends, and so
Sure.
my values changed. Now, if I wanted to get a grasp on that, I noticed my kids they're not doing right, and maybe they believed some things that I don't exactly believe in. Where do we get in, or how do we get into communication as far as that goes? And do we try to reel them back in, or are we going to push them out of the nest at that point?
Oh man. Those are real questions because we're real families. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, let me say that each particular context is different, right? So I would need to know the details of that. Um, and when speaking to your specific situation of your growing up and upbringing, that sounds very like natural, of course, because when a kid's at that age and we say they're going to turn away, the question is, what do they turn to? And that's where they actually do turn towards their peers. Um, it's not a bad thing. I'm not going to say that, but the question is, what peers do they turn towards? Because they're going to be influenced by those peers, right? Ideally, you want to be, and this is actually what I teach in my program, but you want to be in a community of trustworthy present adults. You want to be a trustworthy present parent. And what I mean by that is they know that they can turn to you when the wheels start coming off while they're trying to pursue their own identity, but when they know they have a safe base to come back to. But you're right. A lot of teens don't want to turn back to their parents. So they're going to look for another adult in the community they can trust. I doubt you had that inside your teachers. Who you had that in were your grandparents. What teachers we often feel in the traditional education system, they're out to get us, they're giving us grades, they're judging us, they're always critical of us. And that's why some kids don't turn towards their teachers. I understand that. Yeah.
I ain't
And
gonna
then
lie. I had a teacher that I actually drank and did drugs with. So
yeah. So then hey, and you know, I'll come back to saying this, even with substance abuse and not even abuse, substance exploration and so on, we're going through our first identity breaking. We're going to try to find ways to solve this problem. So that's why I hold no judgment towards that. Um, whenever, again, in my show up framework that I go through with parents, the second one is hold space for collaboration. Because when a kid is identity is breaking, oftentimes we feel in contention with them. Whereas it's like if we work in collaboration with them, it's hey, you're going through this. And this is not adding to your well-being. You're inviting them to see what their ideas are. And you're like, hey, I'm working with you to go through this. That's actually how you help a kid or helps anybody actually through it. Either they don't have skills or they're not supported. That's the only two reasons they're not moving towards what you can what they want for themselves. Because what a person's trying to do at the bottom of the bottle is trying to numb either the pain or trying to take themselves away from it. And I've been there, yeah. And everybody walks a different path with it. But that's why I hold no judgment towards people trying to figure out and try to solve that problem that way. And then there's some friends and some trustworthy people in our lives, like you said, the teacher who thinks this is the answer too. Um, I, but yeah, where are we going with this? Oh, can yeah, do we kick them out or do we bring them back? Um, each context is different because I am an optimistic person. I'm a hopeful person. That said, I work with the parent to make sure the parent is in integrity with themselves, to know that they've done their absolute best. And I'll support the parent in doing that. And the reason I say it like that is because understand your kid is being dysregulated, but your kid has to understand that they can come to you for support. And oftentimes You can't control that over there. What you can control is how you show up.
Mhm.
So I do practice stoicism. My name is Marcus Aurelius, and you can't control what's over there. You can control what's right here. And I'll respect you in your decisions because it might be different finances, might be different values, or so on. I do want you to be there to support your kid. But that's why the work I do, it's before we get there. That's why I'm working with preteens and that part. Like a stitch in time saves nine. But if you get to that point, and that's a very real point to get to. I don't look lightly at it. It change is constantly happening, and I know there's possibility to rekindle that relationship. But you have to work on you because that's what you're responsible for. That's my best answer I feel right now at the moment when you ask me. Yeah.
Now, another problem, and because I definitely was not the perfect parent, I it took me a
You're
while
I-
to get past the alcohol and drug abuse as an adult. I damaged my relationship with my children,
mhm.
and how do you get that trust back from a child when they've seen dad being fall down drunk and verbally abusive and not
Yeah.
very trustworthy?
Uh, thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the aspects of humanity that we don't praise, I'm going to use the word praise and celebrate, is our resilience. And what the word resilience means is re-saltar. That's Latin, which means to bounce back or to jump back again. Um, to be broken, Ernest Hemingway. I'm an English teacher, so when he said the world breaks us all, and some people are made stronger in the broken places, and those that refuse to break are utterly destroyed. But when we focus on that first part, we're made stronger in the broken places. It's acknowledging that you made an error, you made a mistake, then doing verbally saying, this is how it has hurt you. I'm sorry for that. And the third thing is, this is how I'm going to restore it. Now, I say that very quickly in a second, but trust is built over time. It's destroyed in a moment, but it's built over time. And if you commit to coming back to being that trustworthy present parent, thank you for asking this question because I've never had to articulate it like on a podcast as well. But this is what I do in our conferences or in our um, you understand. This is what I do with private clients. But bouncing back or restoring the relationship goes a long way, and that's a skill we need to learn. So another thing I'll say is in all relationships, there's conflict. Now, there are heavier conflicts or heavier hits, as we outlined before, but that doesn't define the relationship. What defines a relationship is how you deal with it. And if you care about the person, you say, this is how I've hurt you and I'm responsible for it. I'm sorry for it. This is what I commit to building back to. And again, trust is built over time. Then it's showing up in that moment again and again and again. Just as you say, you weren't, I won't say it. I'll take your words when you said you weren't the perfect parent. And the only reason I wouldn't say it is because you showed up. You showed up again and again and again. And from what you've told me of your grandchildren, it's paid off. And I give you kudos on that. You're living life, man. Like that's awesome. But just just stick with it to live in your highest self, moment to moment to moment. Yeah.
Well, I'm working a lot harder to get that trust back, especially with my my daughter and my youngest son. My
Yeah.
middle son's kind of he's accepted, that was dad. That's not him anymore. And my daughter actually reached out to me one day and said, "Hey, Dad, let's just go to lunch."
Yeah.
And I should have been the one to initiate that first. I should have, but it opened up my mind to, I need to do this in the future, not have her initiate it. Let her know that Dad cares, Dad wants to fix this. And so I went to my youngest son, who
Yeah.
he says he forgives me, but I can still tell that resistance there.
He's apprehensive.
He's
Yeah.
very apprehensive, but it's like, hey, let's do something. He loves horror movies, so he says, I want to watch this movie. And I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll get together and we'll watch the movie. And so I've got a date with my son Friday night. We're gonna hang out and watch horror movies.
You know, I think, and this is why I say I work with the parent to put on their oxygen mask.
Mhm.
If you're showing you care, you're doing the best you can. What other people hold inside their heads, and when I say other people, sometimes even your children, like when I say you can't control that, sometimes you have to be at peace even when they tell a different narrative inside their head. And sometimes you have to be at peace even when you know you've contributed to that narrative, but you've moved on from that past. Um, Easier said than done, but when you can be at peace in yourself, like that's where you find the peace from the inside out. When I say I help, I work to bring out the best in people, I'm working to bring out the best in the parent so that you can show up for your kid. Yeah.
That's the thing you mentioned over and over again, is showing up for your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, in the framework that I do, it's called the show up framework. But S starts with a strong character identity. It starts with a strong character identity. If you know who you are, um, all behavior and all action comes from your character. So you do it because you do it with your kid and the parent are doing it together. H is hold space for collaboration, learning to work together. Excuse me. O is open up communication. There are different frameworks and how you can exchange thoughts without being at each other's throats, without the power struggle. W is wonder and explore this world together. That's working on projects and having our growth. It gives us a place to talk about something, you know? If your project's learning language or doing woodwork or working on projects that your kid has chosen, like when I say your kid has chosen, like your grandson has chosen those he made that football, that stuff that he's
Yeah.
selling. That's a platform for us to open up conversation. You have a podcast. That's a platform for you to open up conversation with your grandsons and so on. And then you unveil your potential. That means you're opening up, connecting with them from your identity and from your characteristic. That's how you show up for each other. And yeah, I repeat that again and again because that's how we do it. That's how we do it.
Well, I'm assuming since you're in the Bahamas, you do a lot of work online.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, I'm actually here with my aging parents. They showed up for me then. I show up for them now. Yeah,
It's what we're doing now. We
yeah,
just moved
yeah,
back in with my mom because she was here by herself, and she's no spring chicken, and she's had a few health scares. So it's like, hey, you were there for me, taking care of me as a kid. I need to return the favor.
yeah, yeah. That's let me ask you, like, I love how your daughter invited you out, and I think that's where we speak about interdependence. On the other side of, like, after you get through those teenage years and they grow up into independent adults, then it gets to that moment where it's just like, it's not friends, but it's I'm a member of society, you're a member of society, and I care about you. And it's that one step above. It's family, yeah, but it's a family that that you're making an effort to actually connect with. Like ideally, that's I think a healthy relationship between a parent and a kid at like when you have adult kids. And when you know that if you put in the work now at a younger age, and now you can help your daughter do that with her son, but like when you put in the work here, that's what it ideally leads to. Yeah.
I love watching her. She's always involved with both of her sons. One loves sports and the other one loves to make money, and she's there for both of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Oh
people want
man.
to get a hold of you. How do they do so?
MarcusHiggs.com. That's my website. It'll tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm working on a book called The Show Up Framework, Show Up to Bring Out Your Child's Potential. And then I'm having a workshop come up in 2 weeks, um, on the 2nd, yeah, of June. And that's just to, it's called Mapping Your Family's Virtues and Values. Uh, the virtues are 24. They're actually, have you ever heard of VIA, Virtues in Action?
No.
These are in all religions, all cultures, all people. This is what it means to be human. Things just like curiosity, um, what is it? Courage, perseverance. And there are 5 of them that are expressed most, but all of them, all of us have them. So those are virtues. All of us have virtues, but then values are what you find important. And when you can map your family's virtues and values, then it's highly relevant to have conversations with your kids about, hey, people like us do things like this, right? Your last name is Yeats, or is that right?
Yates.
Yates? Yates. So you could say, this is what the Yates do. This is how we behave and this is how we show up. Now you're going to do your own thing as you're independent, but this is our family culture. Culture is, we're a group of people who this is what we value. And the whole idea is for families to, yeah. And you know what? I've been around the world. I've seen a-holes in all religions and in all cultures and in all groups of people. I've seen beautiful people in all cultures, all religions, and so on. So that's where I come from. If you raise your child with virtues and values, like we're all living life, and I'm like that's my contribution to the world. So I don't care what you practice, what you believe. I care what you value, and I value well-being in human life. So that that workshop is there. Um, and you can find more information about that there. Yeah. Other than that, I'm on LinkedIn, not so much on the other social media platforms, but I'm growing. I'm just starting out.
Do you have a link for your workshop, or is it just on
Not at the
your
moment.
website?
You would I'll put up a link right at the end of this. It's not on there right now, but I know how to set up a link, and I'll set it up right after.
Okay, because I'd love to share everything in the description just to make it easier for folks to find you.
We'll get it done. We'll get it.
Well, Marcus, this was really fun, man. Thank you.
Hey, I had a yeah, I enjoyed it too, man. Thank you for connecting, and I still love your background. Yeah,
Thank you again for coming on the show.
it's been a pleasure. It was wonderful. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. And from our regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network